Good morning. I'm David Bowditch, the Assistant Director in charge of the FBI in Los Angeles. First of all, I want to focus on 2 points. First off, again, our hearts and our prayers are with the families of all these victims of this very heinous act. Secondly, I ask you to be patient. We are trying to give you little bits as we can as we ascertain more and more facts. As you can tell by this investigation and even the media response here today, this is not your average investigation. We have multiple scenes, we have many victims, and it will take time. There are a tremendous number of assets and resources being applied to this investigation. My focus as a fact finder who works for an organization that is really fixated on facts is I would much rather be slower and correct with the information that comes out to you than fast and incorrect. It's incredibly important for us because the integrity of this investigation is absolutely paramount as far as our concerns, absent other than taking care of the victims. So we are applying a number of federal resources. We are continuing to work very, very carefully with our partners here at San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department, San Bernardino City Police Department, and the ATF. These resources are being applied for a number of reasons. I'll give you an example of some things we're doing today. We flew in a team to do some, from Washington, to do some reenactment, reconstruction of the crime scene. We have continued collecting evidence and are continuing to collect evidence at the multiple scenes. We are going to fly some evidence back to our laboratory in Washington, D.C. today on a plane. That is because we want expeditious analysis of that evidence. As far as the digital media that was asked about earlier, the digital media is incredibly important because we are trying to determine the motive. We do not yet know the motive. We cannot rule anything out at this point. And we're hoping that some of that digital media exploitation will help us and assist us in obtaining some of that. Again, it would be irresponsible of me, and it would be way too early for us to speculate on motive of why this occurred. Any questions for the FBI?
Sir, why is the motive so important to the FBI? Have you found any information that says that he did this in the name of religion, or that or with all this ammunition, it's part of a larger group and a larger plot, or maybe he was planning a different attack and got ticked off and decided, okay, I'm just going to turn on these guys.
So again, if you look at the amount of obvious pre-planning that went in, the amount of armaments that he had, the weapons and the ammunition, there was obviously a mission here. We know that. We do not know why. We don't know if this was the intended target or if there was something that triggered him to do this immediately. We just don't know. And again, that's going to take time for us to get to that answer.
Was he in touch with subjects, international subjects, that the FBI or the authorities were already interested in overseas, either by phone or through social media, CNN has reported?
International subjects, we are still working through that. We know there was some international travel. They came into the U.S., both he and she was not his wife at the time, but she is now. They both came into the U.S. in July of 2014. They have since had a baby together. He is a U.S. person. She is still here on a K-1 visa.
Do you believe his international travel is connected in any way to this massacre?
We do not know. It's certainly something we're going to look into very, very carefully.
What about the communications that he had with investigative subjects, terrorism subjects that the FBI had under investigation?
I did not hear you.
What can you tell us about any communications he had with terrorism subjects that the FBI had been investigating?
We're still working through that, and again, that goes towards the flow of and the pace of the information. I want to make sure we're absolutely correct before we put that out.
In the United States, the FBI was investigating.
We're still working through that.
6 months ago, he was at abroad. What countries was he traveling to, and how long had he been?
Pardon me?
How long has he been out of the country, and what countries has he visited?
It appears that he came back into the U.S. in July of 2014, as I said earlier. I do not know all the countries he visited. We know he did go to Pakistan at one point. We know she is here on a K-1 visa under a Pakistani passport.
What can you tell us about a trip to Saudi Arabia?
Don't have all the facts yet.
How much do you know about her that would explain why she got involved in this caper?
We don't know enough. We do not know enough. I'm going to take 2 more questions.
Is there any evidence that these IEDs were...
Again, it would be irresponsible and premature of me to call this terrorism. The FBI defines terrorism very specifically, and we are still, that is the big question for us, is what is the motivation for this? First and foremost, the integrity of this investigation, again, is paramount. Secondly, it's ultimately determined the motive and the inspiration for this attack.
The IEDs that were found, how would you describe it when it's construction? Was it professional or was it amateurish? Was it high-grade military explosives used there or black ops?
Well, I'm not an expert either, as the chief mentioned earlier, so I don't want to go too deep. I will say there is some level of sophistication, certainly, when you're tying them together and you have seemingly a remote-controlled car that is attached to the device. I'm going to take one more question, and I'm going to turn it back to the chief. Yes, ma'am.
Based off of any kind of designs with Inspire magazine?
I didn't hear you.
Any type of evidence that shows a linkage between the designs of the IEDs and Inspire magazine?
We knew that question would come up, and we're looking into it as we speak.
Thank you.